Welcome back. Mr. Mike Ejiofor joins us now. He is a former director with the SSS. Thank you for coming on this morning.
My pleasure.
Well, speaking about security, many questions about how our government is handling. We'll start with these xenophobic attacks in South Africa. Is this something you think that so far the government of the day has or have discharged themselves creditably?
Well, I would say the government has tried, in handling the situation because, one, you don't use evil to pay evil, even though we believe in reciprocity in diplomatic circles. One clear thing is that South African government is not in support of their actions. So
did they demonstrate that at the outset?
Yes, I think so. But I think there was a minister of, I've forgotten now, who made a very careless statement from the South African government, and I think that should be condemned. Nigerian government on its part, I think the National Assembly also has ordered that the High Commissioner should be recalled. It's unfortunate that after Nigeria's contribution in seeing to the end of apartheid, South Africans, who are our brothers, are paying us back in this coin. It's rather very unfortunate and should be condemned.
Some people say that we should stop singing that song. That is old school now, for lack of a better phrase, and that we should move beyond that to facing the problem at hand. How do you think that Nigeria can address this problem? Do you think that our wait and see approach, to what is going on in South Africa, is the way to go?
Well, it's not really the way to go because if you see South Africa, I think has more interest in Nigeria. Take the MTN, DSTV for instance. Nigeria should come out really, like you said, not singing old songs, to also place some sanctions so that the South African government will take action, seem to be serious on it's not just sufficient to say that over 300 people have been arrested and they have been prosecuted. This is not the first time it's happening, you recall. It has happened before, and the government of South Africa should be seen to be doing something more drastic than what they are doing now.
What would you like to see them do?
Well, I want to see South African high power delegation coming to Nigeria to appeal to Nigeria to see how the matter can be resolved. And on our part too, I think our government should take some more drastic actions, placing South African interest to some extent. Like I said, we have MTN, we have these big malls, we have DSTV. And in fact, that brings me to the issue of DSTV, though the matter is in court. There's the exorbitant rate they are charging, and nobody seems to be saying that. The government should also come out this time to insist that, well, you either operate within our framework by reducing your...
No, but isn't that going to be by fiat? Because what have we also done back home to ensure that we also create competition for them? And not just if they come into the market, we want to legislate their market.
Market forces actually, but I believe that DSTV and other multinationals are exploiting Nigerians. And I should see government to be coming out to check such excesses.
Because, governments are the first people who should know this.
Yes.
We have a Ministry of Trade, Commerce, we have industry, so they should be the ones who should be in the front line of all this.
That's what I'm advocating, that government should come out to negotiate, if possible, negotiate with them to say, well, the argument they will have, of course, is the operating environment. Power, for instance.
Everybody goes to. Don't we have that same? We face the same operating environment.
They do, but that's their argument, because they run on most of their sites on diesel. If the power had been regular, possibly we can now insist, but because of and market forces are determined by cost and not.
So let's bring this, because sometimes this kind of issues dovetail into security. Because only recently when we had our first guest, we're talking about migration and how this sometimes affects economic security, which can bring about things like this. We talked about treaties that African countries have signed especially regionally. We looked at ECOWAS, and that also brought us into this discussion of how do we check security across borders, not just economically now, but across borders, considering this free movement agreements that we have.
Yeah, like the ECOWAS Treaty, for instance, allows free movement of people within the sub-region. It's also creating problems for us, like the issue of Boko Haram. You hardly can differentiate between a Nigerian, a Cameroonian, and Nigerian. Some of them have families in both countries. It becomes a major problem for control, border control. But I want to see the incoming government do more in terms of regulation through the immigration. And these things are not done by fiat. They are done by procurement of modern equipment. So I expect, since the incoming government also made serious promise on security, I want to believe that the issue of Boko Haram, government has made substantial progress. The present government has made substantial progress, so I expect that the incoming government should consolidate on that and go further in ensuring at least our border control is measures put in place to ensure effective border control.
Do you think that we were too premature with this in terms of not having enough infrastructure, or the type of infrastructure needed to put this free border movement in place?
Yeah, I would say we didn't have the necessary infrastructure.
What should we have had?
Well, you see, we have, our borders are so porous. We have over 1,600 something borders. So this cannot be manned.
Why?
So what I think we should do...
Because we have, pardon me to button, if we have a Minister of Interior, because when they get into these offices, or when they want to get into public office, it's usually like ride or die for many of them. But when they get into some of these offices, it's completely different. And you ask yourself, look, if you are fighting to get into certain public offices, why don't you just know that you will have sleepless nights ensuring that you deliver on the jobs you've been given?
Yeah, well, it's, you see, when you make promises, that you're coming to do this, you're coming to do this in government. When you come into government and see the realities on ground, you have to go back to the drawing board.
But they never resign.
In Nigeria, that's not possible.
No, we've had Professor Batinaji resigned.
But let's not go into that. How did he resign?
But he resigned, bottom line.
Well, he resigned. But I wouldn't know how he resigned. There are some backhand politics, in the resignation. But I don't want to go into that. But we have not matured to that extent that people would take the honorable path of resigning their, their promises.